Here is a 2023 Honda CR-V Hybrid Sport in Radiant Red. The Sport is going to get a unique interior trim. This is all new with the hybrid technology. It's wider, it's longer, more bold. I'm Anthony from Hawkeye Rides, and I'm going to explain the exterior, inside, all the specs and features, take it for a drive, give some pros and cons, and a light comparison in trim options that you get with the hybrid opposed to the standard gas. LED headlights start us off. It's going to get a more stylish exterior appearance because this is the Sport trim. Gloss black will be found in the large grille, and the chrome trim that would normally be on the top is getting the gloss black that goes into the headlamp assembly, and on the lower you get the gloss black that outlines the air vents. It really does stress a more performance style, even though you're not necessarily getting that underneath the hood. Because it's a Sport trim, gloss black on the side view mirrors and the roof rails, the badging in the back will also get the gloss black. Same clearance at 7.8 inches, but it's taller by 1.4 inches, 58.6, 41.4 weight distribution. Because it's a Sport, unique wheels, getting gloss black, 18-inch, multi-spoke. Matte black will surround the fenders and the lower rockers, which here, because it's a Sport trim, I wish that they put the gloss black because it would have gave more of a pop, especially to this Radiant Red. Because it's the hybrid, a beefier subframe for both the front and the rear, McPherson strut front suspension, independent double wishbone rear suspension. Both will have a stabilizer bar and coil springs. Active noise cancellation is going to be better in here because of the sound deadening, because of the insulation through the crawl firewall behind the instrument panel, and stronger B-pillars with thicker windows. And the new i4 with 204 horsepower, 247 pound-feet of torque, paired to a CVT transmission. Or you can get the 1.5 liter turbo i4, which is a carryover from last year. And because this is a hybrid, 43 mpgs for the city, 36 mpgs for the highway. It's 2.7 inches longer, 2.4 inches longer in a wheelbase. So it just gives a little bit added room for cargo capacity because we're gonna lose storage underneath the floor because of the hybrid technology. And you're gonna have more headroom throughout this than the prior gen. And to top it off, the lower will still get dual exhaust outlets with the satin aluminum that's going to wrap around it. The grille pattern will be in between on the bumper trims of the silver and the matte black. So it does have a sporty cue for the rear exit, even though it's not necessarily packing that much performance. Non-power liftgate for the Sport, 39.3 cubic feet. You have a couple of nooks on the side with a 12-volt charger. The rear bench split folds at a 60-40 split. That maxes cargo to 76.5 cubic feet. It sits a little bit lower. It's a huge opening. This is the hybrid. We're gonna move it a bit so we can start it up and hear the engine. The CR-V comes standard with 10-way power seat adjustment for the driver. Heated front seats, because this is the Sport trim, you'll have this contrast stitching in a unique cloth interior. Headroom at 38.2 inches, legroom 43.2 inches. It's wider outside, so it's going to be wider inside, giving a lot more space for the front occupants. Standard 7-inch touchscreen with AM, FM, streaming Bluetooth audio, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. If you want them wireless, you got to go to the EXL. Reverse camera with the lines that do expand out when you turn the wheel. Different camera angles, and to show for the tow line. With the honeycomb seamless air vents, aluminum look that's going to be underneath it, dual climate control settings, USB 12 volt. Wireless charger will be on the EXL, matte black around the gear lever. Leather is going to be wrapped around it with that contrast stitching, and the same thing for the steering wheel, leather wrap with the contrast stitching, multi-function, 3-spoke, adaptive cruise control, lane keep assist. Gauge cluster is a 7-inch with a storage pocket right behind the cup holders. It's going to be more sporty. You get the contrast stitch, open up inside, and it's a deep storage pocket. It's pretty wide, so it gives optimal storage capacity to the front occupants. The door panel receives the same pattern structure that's on the dash through the center. One touch up and down for the front windows. It's going to be soft where you rest your arms, and a medium-sized storage pocket with a couple of beverage holders. And because this is the sport trim, we get a moonroof. No home link or auto-dimming mirror. For the back seats, headroom is at 38.2 inches, which is the same. It has a little bit of a lip here, and 41 inches of leg room. Because this is the hybrid, we get USB ports, air vents, storage only behind the passenger side. We have an armrest with a couple of cup holders. These seats will recline. Just find the lever, and you can relax a little bit more so. The seatbelt here does give a little bit of a area that's a little bit less comfortable. Door panel gets the same materials in the front, so nothing stripped out. It's going to be a little bit more sporty in the back, a smaller storage pocket. Sliding over into the center, the floor is not completely flat, but you can put your feet here, so you don't have to worry about sharing feet space. The rails are pushed up enough. It is a wide interior cabin, but space will be shared as well as shoulder space. But the headroom is actually quite good for the size of this vehicle. 204 horsepower, 247 pound-feet of torque. Here we go. And that was more or less 100% according to what it says in the gauge cluster. It's going to be about mid-7s to around mid-8 seconds, 0 to 60. It's not going to be the fastest vehicle, but you buy this for a vehicle that's everyday, that sips fuel. Interior space is a lot more wider than the prior gen, but because of the gear lever standing up, it does kind of leave a little bit of an eyesore here in the center. Going up trim levels is where you get your features, and this is derived on all of the new Honda lines, and a lot of vehicles are starting to incorporate this, so you can't really add any options unless you want to do aftermarket specs or like an HPD package. It holds itself relatively well on the road, even though it isn't the best in weight distribution, so you can do a little bit of maneuverability. It is going to be top heavy. One thing that I dislike right off the bat is if your sticker price that you're looking at says BD on the end, that means blind spot monitoring is deleted. I'm going to try to get it as straight as possible to show you how well she is now. It does feel a little bit more smooth. It's going to be a little bit more quiet because it's hybrid, so a lot of the times the engine will not be engaged. When the engine does get engaged, it does filter a little bit into the cabin, but the sound deadening is more so in this than it is the gas variant. So if you want a more quiet cabin, you want to go to the hybrid trim. And it doesn't matter what mode you're in. It's going to engage into the engine, especially when you hit around 25 to 30% of throttle or pushing the gas pedal. And as you get up to a higher speed, it's still smooth, 18-inch wheels, so that definitely keeps the ride a lot more composed. It feels wider. Now that's going to take me to some pros and cons, and starting off with the pros. It's a hybrid, so you're getting great MPGs. It's not a plug-in, so you don't have to worry about anything. Just pump fuel in it and just do your normal chores day in and day out. room in the cabin has been improved for headroom, not so much for legroom, but you also get more cargo capacity. Because it's a hybrid, you do lose a little bit in the trunk, and you have a little bit of a lip when you put the seats down at that 60-40 split. For the front occupants, you have a substantial amount of room in the footwell compared to the prior gen, and it's a lot more cleaned up here in the center. Because it's a longer center cluster, because the vehicle is almost 3 inches longer, I wish that they did have a pass-through to give a little bit more optimal space, or give us the pilot dash layout where we don't get the honeycomb design. This is just opened up and there's storage for the passenger side. Finally getting a digital reader for the gauge cluster, which is standard power seat adjustment for the driver, heated front seats. The infotainment being 9-inch would be more optimal. I understand why they're giving a smaller one. Because of where it's set, it is a little bit of an eyesore, something to get used to because it's a long and wide windscreen. That's going to take me to some cons about the vehicle, which has to start off with, we're losing towing capacity. 500 pounds doesn't necessarily sound like a lot. It's just when I'm wanting to get something a little bit more eco-friendly, I don't want to lose in performance and towing capacity. Brakes can stop on a dime. Turn radius, more or less at a stop point, is going to be the same as the Pilot. Give her a little go. Other cons about the vehicle, you've heard through a lot of my reviews on Honda. I'm just not a big fan of this tier segment where you have to go up in order to get features. There's no options for a QI charger. You got to go to the EXL to start that. The same thing for the larger touchscreen. If you want navigation, you can only get it on the Hybrid Sport Touring. The word sport, not a big fan of either, because it's not a sport vehicle, it's a trim layout. So don't think this is something that's going to get a 0 to 60 in 5 seconds. It's just not gonna happen. A few other things that just shouldn't be there is the deletes, which are still happening in a lot of auto industries. So it's not just on Honda. At least they put it on the top part of the sticker, so you don't have to read through all the specs. It'll actually indicate it with the acronym, so you don't have to look and be like, oh man, I bought the car and I don't have blind spot monitoring. The back seats, they're comfortable. It's a wider and longer bench. Just the seat belt buckle, they really should have done where it's inside the seat here instead of on top here, and it just flaps down. Because for the person that sits behind the driver, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable because it's always going to be behind his seat unless, or her seat, unless you disconnect it and only sit 2 occupants. Also, folding the seat back, if you want it to recline, it just kind of throws back. It doesn't really have a happy medium, so you have to kind of hold it to gauge it, so it doesn't just fly all the way back or all the way forward, where it's a little bit uncomfortable because then you sit kind of like this. I like how Honda has went more rugged on the exterior. The door panels for the front pocket will be smaller. The door panels in the back will be larger than the prior gen. No storage behind the driver's seat for the seat pocket. This is pretty much found in a lot of the variants that compare against it. As for comparable vehicles, whether Nissan, Toyota, or Subaru, this is going to have a little bit more space in the front. The back seats recline a little bit more so. Horsepower will be more in this until you go into the Toyota hybrid trim, and then it's going to be a touch more. It doesn't feel too much wider in the lane than the prior gen because it's just a touch wider than the prior gen, but for maneuverability purposes you can get in and out. So even though it's a hybrid, daily use, it ticks the box, and you still have a little bit of performance underneath it with adaptive cruise control lane keep assist. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Check out the next video, merchandise, website, and Instagram. Leave a comment and a like, and I'd like to thank Regal Honda for giving us this 2023 Honda CR-V Sport Hybrid for our car review.